Good morning. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Oleh, and it's my pleasure to welcome you at Ukraine Media Center today. Today we have invited you to discuss the state program for compensation of demining, and we'll talk in details about it. From the beginning of this year, the farmers have submitted 225 applications to take part in this state program to be compensated for their demined airfields, but some of them were refused as such as contradicting the requirements of the law. So today the Ministry of Economy, in cooperation with the partners, is launching the awareness campaign about this process, and today we will discuss the applications, the conditions in detail. We'll discuss who can make benefit of this program. And let me introduce our speakers. Joining us today are Ihor Bezkaravainyi, Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine. Also joining us is Lark, Mine Action Program Manager, UNDP Ukraine. Also joining us is Volodymyr Baida, Director of the Center for Humanitarian Demining, and Oleh Khomenko, General Director of the Ukrainian Agribusiness Club. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Ihor, please, the floor is yours. Please describe in detail what is the program like, how can the farmers apply for the program and make use of it. Well, the program that we are about to discuss today is a response by the Ukrainian government, is the answer to the questions of our international partners, which is being frequently asked, like, what is Ukraine doing for demining? Because sometimes the impression is that the demining of Ukraine is the exclusive responsibility of foreign partners, and it's a stale practice that all around the world in the countries affected by the ordinance as a result of war, the demining is happening at the expense of the support programs, donors, partners, different programs implemented by different UN agencies. But in Ukraine, the things are happening in a more dynamic manner, a little bit under different scenarios. And one of such scenarios that is usually happening rarely in the countries where the full-scale war is raging on is when the government invests resources in the mining of agricultural lands, because the agricultural lands, in the opinion of the Ministry of Economy, is the boost that can bring the economy back in action, to heat it up, and we're killing two birds with one stone. On one hand, we're fulfilling our obligations on clearance of the territories and creation of the safe space, and on the other hand, this environment is economically active and can be used. So our program, it was started back last year with the beginning of the last budget year, but it started actually operating in September. In fact, it started working in September. And for 9 months, the team of the Ministry of Economy were spent by its team to build the architecture of this program, the procedures of submitting applications and development of different technical issues. And only after the third or fourth try, it started working. The work is still in progress. We keep responding the suggestions of the demining center, Humanitarian Demining Center. We are in constant touch with the representatives of the mine action operators, with the representatives of agricultural sector, and we try to make this program as convenient as possible and to make sure it covers as much requests as possible. So the goal of today's event is not only to provide information about this program, but also to share the concerns, how do I put it, properly in Ukrainian, our fears, something that we feel that upon the results of the first quarter, the dynamic is lower than it used to be in the beginning of the program, even despite we have incredible resource that we can take advantage of, but it's underused. So, for example, in the year 2024, within the same period, we had 50 bids, and we signed contracts almost $500 million worth, but within the same period of this year, we only have 18 contracts and around $300 million worth of signed agreements, or those that are about to be signed. So what can it tell us? First of all, it confirms our hypothesis that the agrarians are currently busy with the preparation to the new field season, and probably it becomes the reason behind this reduced attention. But another hypothesis is that our program is not so well known. People may think that it's complicated and it requires a lot of resources to make use of it. But Volodymyr Baida is going to tell you in detail about this. He's the administrator of the program, and he will debunk those myths, because the program is very simple. All that is required from a farmer is their desire and the availability of internet. That's basically everything they need to make use of this program. And the third indicator, which is of the biggest concern to us, is the quality of applications. This year, the quality of applications is way lower. A lot of applications are being refused due to a simple reason, because they don't contain any contamination or are outside of those territories that require such type of works. So basically, to put ourselves on the safe side and to make sure that those resources that were allocated by the government and the parliament for mine action, there was a website established, an information platform that contains all of the information about the program, and it has a clear step-by-step explanation about what should be done to get an opportunity to use this program. Let me switch to the next slide. So this is what I've mentioned. We had 50 bids last year, and this year it's only 15. You can see the correlation of figures on the screen. Currently, the amount allocated for the program is 3 billion hryvnia, but in fact, upon the first quarter, we've drawn only 10% of it, which is of big concern to us. So now let's try to use the link to proceed to the website. So this is how the platform is going to look like. We want to thank UNDP for the development of the platform, as well as the government of the Republic of Korea, who supported the development of this website. It contains a step-by-step instruction on how to submit your application, on how the compensation is going on. So using this website, you can follow the link to the State Agrarian Register and submit your application. So basically, our goal is to increase the percentage of the used funds, to use the funds that were allocated for this year. And after we launch the platform, we are going to advertise it always possible. We're going to organize the work in the regions. We will talk directly to the farmers, and we are going to build the capacity of the mine action operators that is being grown by modernization of this program. For example, I'll take a little bit of work away from Volodymyr, but it's a good case that can demonstrate how the program is being modernized year by year. Last year, we didn't have the upper limit for the bids, so basically we could submit any land plot, and there was limitation for the operators who don't have any work experience. They were not admitted to such bids. But after we've analyzed the first bids, we've realized that we should put the upper limit, because when it comes to large land plots such as 1,000 hectares, it's very difficult for operators to cover it. So basically, we need to break it down to smaller land plots and to allocate 200, 300 hectares land plots for one operator. And this is how this land plot becomes good for working. The operators can, or the farmers can submit for compensation, but for operators who don't have experience, this limitation is lifted, and the mine action operators who don't have experience can now bid for the contracts for the land plots up to 350 hectares. So our task is to build the capacity of mine action operators. That's one side. And another side is to popularize the program among the farmers to use the available resources to the largest extent possible. And I think that the third step will be expansion of the program for different types of lands, different types of lots. It will be something adjacent to those existing currently, but we'll try to cover larger territory with this program. Thank you, Mr. Ihor. Mr. Ben, UNDP keeps supporting this process on systemic basis, which fact we appreciate a lot. Obviously, we all understand the usefulness. This process is important for all of us here in Ukraine, so definitely we want to thank you for your support, and we would like to hear about your expectations from implementation of this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, as you said, I mean, UNDP's role in Ukraine, our mandate is to support the government of Ukraine, to support Ukrainian civil society, and specifically my experience and the unit that I am responsible for is responsible for the whole area of the clearance and mitigation, reduction of the impact of all the explosive contamination that has been produced by this war so far and continues to be produced. Of that, as we know, a large amount contaminates agricultural land. And as we know, again, for Ukraine, agricultural land is critical, not only for Ukraine, in fact, but for the world, because Ukraine is a food basket, we could say, on which a large part of the world actually does depend for its food security. So this particular initiative by Ministry of Economy, Humanitarian Demining Center, is extremely interesting. I have worked for over 30 years in this subject around the world. I have never seen such an innovative approach. And it's important, very important, that not only the funds available, as Deputy Minister said, but the farmers, the beneficiaries, know how to access that money, what is required. So thanks to funds from the Republic of Korea, we were able to provide technical support to the ministry, to the HDC, to help to establish this website. And hopefully it will increase again now, or accelerate the uptake of applications to access the fund to clear more agricultural land.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ben. Mr. Volodymyr, you're a direct participant of a team that keeps implementing this project. So let me ask you a question. What were the complications that you stumbled upon, probably some typical errors while submitting the applications and selection, and also the reasons for refusal? Thank you very much. Greetings, everyone. Well, as it was just said by Mr. Deputy Minister, this year we have more applications than last year, but the dynamic is worse in terms of dynamics. The Center for Humanitarian Demining is a non-profit organization that works in the system of the Cabinet of Ministers Secretariat. So let me tell you a couple of words about organizations, so even our farmers can understand with whom they are supposed to work. So basically, the center is established for coordination of all of the efforts in the area of humanitarian demining. Well, basically, the center deals with way more than this program, but the program is our key part of work that we are involved in. Well, the number of specialists in the center is probably not so big, but it's sufficient to cover all of the farmers. And last year we started pretty well. Also, this year the program started operating in February. Currently, we got 228 applications, including 196 refused. And the reasons for refusal are pretty simple. 102 applications were refused because there was no confirmation of non-technical survey. What does it mean, non-technical survey? It's one of the parts of humanitarian demining process. Well, let me put it for the farmers so they can understand it. So when mine action operators, after certain works, they can confirm the fact of the contamination of this or that area. The farmers may do it at their own expense or at the expense of the donors. And currently, our employees, to make sure that the maximum amount of farmers are covered with non-technical survey, currently work with the Ministry of Economy. We are in agreement with the local military administrations. So we provided them with opportunities to engage more mine action operators in Chernihiv, Sumy, Kherson, the Zaporizhia region. So everywhere the operators work who, at the expense of the donors or other funds, exercise those works. So if the farmers don't know how to do the non-technical survey, we have a dedicated department. They can get in touch with us, and we tell them how to do it in a way most convenient for the farmers. So basically, more than 100 applications that were refused, they didn't have a confirmation that this or that land lot was contaminated. For example, in Kharkiv region, now the non-technical survey is almost finalized for a territory of more than 20,000 hectares, and we're waiting for this process to be finalized so more farmers could submit their applications. Also, 59 applications were refused due to improper application. The farmers wanted to get compensation for their worked land, and they were trying to join our program. So just like Mr. Deputy Minister has said, it's for the farmers to understand that there is one entry point to the program, state land register, and there is a list of programs for the farmers. Again, if they have any doubts, they can get in touch with us at the Center for Humanitarian Demining 24/7. They can call us, and our hotline employees can tell the farmers in detail. So on top of the website, they can get in touch through our hotline, and the people will tell them like what are the documents they need to submit, what is the exact program they need to pick, and how to submit their application. Basically, all they need is the connection with the internet. So if a farmer has a confirmation that their land is contaminated, they need connection to internet, 15, 20 minutes, and it's done. Their application is submitted. If the farmers don't know whether they have a confirmation of their land contaminated, they contact us through the hotline, and we tell them step-by-step instruction on how to do that. They submit their application, and that's it. Well, another reason, in one of the areas, we had 14 and 10 applications. Why the applications were refused? The applicants had tax debt. We had this requirement last year, so only those could apply who don't have any tax debt. And now that requirement was changed. If it's a debt of on the unified tax of the fourth group, then it's all right. They still can be admitted to the participation of the program, but other taxes should be still paid. So it's still a small percentage, 14 and 10 applications, but again, everything is clear here. If the farmers plan to work on this or that land plot and they have sufficient amount of turnover funds, they have sufficient material capabilities, they should try to pay those taxes. But there is a flip side of the coin. Those farmers who lost a lot, we cooperate with FAO and WFP. So after we demine the lands, we are about to suggest more programs this year so that after the farmers have their land demined, so that they can get additional funds for procurement of material and other resources. There were also 11 refusals when the farmers didn't want or failed to open the accounts, the escrow accounts, because according to the procedure, the farmers are supposed to open escrow account in one of the state banks. Again, using the hotline, our specialists can tell the farmers how to open those escrow accounts, and they are specifically used to make sure that neither farmers nor the operators can draw those funds from the account until the demining is finalized. And again, it's not so complicated. We can help on our end, but we had to refuse 11 applications. They had already the fact of contamination of their land confirmed. But we tried to get in touch and with those farmers. They all have their own issues, their own programs. But we tried to tell them that there's nothing to fear about this program. Even if you never opened an escrow account, there are specialists in the centers who can go to the regions. Our representatives keep working in Kharkiv region 24/7. In other regions, they work as well as a mobile teams. So if a farmer says, like, there is a land lot contaminated and I don't know what to do, I have no internet, I don't know where to call, we will come their way, because it's our common responsibility, it's our common work. This is where demining is starting. So the reasons for refusal are clearly explained. They should be clear to everybody. And I hope that thanks to this awareness campaign, thanks to communication of this information, we will be able to communicate it to the farmers. So if you have contaminated land, or if you have a suspicion of the land being contaminated, no matter if there is NTS or no NTS, we can pick the farmer and we will bring them on our shoulders to this point. Everything that's required from the farmer is their desire. Even internet is not an issue here. We'll help with everything. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Volodymyr. Mr. Oleh, you're representing farmers here, so we would like to hear from you. To what extent are the farmers interested in this program, and what are the barriers, what are the obstacles that you're seeing for the agrarians on the way of submission of their application? Well, you haven't introduced me in the very beginning, but those present here, they know me. I really represent the farmers community. And there is a colleague who represents the Club of Agrarian Business. And the problem discussed today is of incredible meaning. And we appreciate the fact that the Ministry of Economy agreed to sit at this common table, and now the information community is seeing us, and all this information is being communicated to our farmers community, because you may know that information was closed from us, and there was no month last year that would pass without a farmer blowing up on a mine in his field. And we were asking the farmers to be more careful, to be more cautious, and they're saying, I just cannot see the wheat waiting to be harvested in my field, and I'm standing here being afraid to harvest it, and it just rots in front of my eyes. So they were risking their lives to harvest everything. And now, as Mr. Ben has said, we are a global grain basket, and we have to help all the world So the problem that we're discussing is of incredible meaning again. But really, non-technical survey requires certain improvements because information is not sufficient. And Mr. Ihor, we have to organize it through the local administrations. We have to organize meetings with the representatives of agrarian sector to communicate more information to them. That's the first thing. Secondly, we need to do more to make sure this non-technical survey is described more clearer, because what is suggested can be done in 2 hours with the head of the regional administration. I mean, the preparation of documents, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this or that land lot requires demining. Last year, we had an example. We were contacted by one Italian company who has 3 aerial satellites in the orbit, and they do the remote gauging for mining of rare earth metals, and they're also involved in precision farming. Is the system of precision farming for the agrarians when they identify the pests in the field, in their fields. For example, the location of that pested area. So basically, what they suggest is to identify the unexploded ordnance in the fields from the space or in the forests where it's difficult to identify using the drones. Definitely, there may be up to 25 meters deviation. But if we show it in a 100 hectares field that takes a month to survey using the handheld mine detector and using this aerial space gauging, they show like this and that area, two places, and it doesn't really matter whether the explosive agent is contained in a plastic or metal container. It still can be identified from the space, and it's sufficient to just come to this small land plot, either with a handheld mine detector or the drone mine detector. And with this error up to 20 centimeters, then we may find those pieces of unexploded ordnance. So there were a number of online conferences with representatives of Ministry of Economy, local administration of Mykolaiv and Kherson region, the Ministry of Economy, and the heads of the local administrations. They were blaming me somehow. Ministry of Defense said, we don't need this, we have the right guys with the mine detectors and they are going to do the job. I said, all right, but it's gonna take you 10 times or 100 times more time, and we are being provided this opportunity for free. Then FAO was involved. We had a number of meetings in the FAO office. We got them in touch with that Italian company. I know I talk a lot about this, but we lost that opportunity, and those things should be recovered because they are going to help a lot with the non-technical survey and with other steps that need to be taken by the demining specialist. And it's also important next time we will have to get the representatives of state geographical cadastre connected to our meeting, because the cadastre doesn't contain the land plots that we submit after the clearance of areas, and it's not a demining problem. We were fighting for years to open this cadastre, specifically when it comes to different lands that were transferred or handed over to individuals or legal entities. You know, the data is currently closed. And it was not about demining back then. So those lands that I'm talking about should be added to the land cadastre so that the farmers can see all of the coordinates. For example, if I want to submit a land plot for demining and it's not contained in the cadastre, so it should be done immediately. We should ask the representatives of state land cadastre when this will be done. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk about this today. We are about to change the situation for the better. There's still a lot of work ahead, and we want to thank everybody who helps us. This gentleman sitting to the right of me, that he, that he bets his time and his life to help us overcome the obstacles that we're facing, and I'm confident we will be able to overcome them, and our farmers will be able to recover what was temporarily taken from them, and they will even multiply it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leonid. Can you please let me go, because I'm having a different conference. Mr. Volodymyr, Mr. Ihor, some remarks about the issues mentioned by Mr. Leonid? Yes, I will use this opportunity to respond. It's not a topic of our today's discussion, but still the matter of technological development, technological innovations was touched upon. Well, the principles, the approaches, the tools for land survey and for demining are changing. They are dynamically developing, but what's important to understand when it comes to demining, extraction of unexploded ordnance, and for the recultivation of the land, it will be difficult to invent something new. Well, a lot of things happening now are related to identification of territories, but again, the technologies used can be the data massives, drones, satellites, and it's not only about the images as we're used to see and understand it. It's important also to remember that there is no like silver bullet or magic stick. It just doesn't exist. If it would, we would have found it already within 3 years of work. What is developing now is the cutting-edge technology, something that we think of as magic. It will be all developed in Ukraine, but currently it's all happening in Ukraine. Well, I agree with Mr. Ihor, and I want to say that this today's broadcast, I would like it to focus on making the farmers aware of what we're doing, and basically all of the program, all of the system, to bring it back. It already exists in Ukraine. Basically all of the technical innovations, all of those things, we are about to use them. We are already using them, and those are parallel processes. We started, telling about our cooperation with the Ministry of Economy, and if we tell everything, it would take like several press conferences like this, but today I would like to focus on the fact that we've gathered today to communicate it to the farmers that the program does exist. And even if the farmers don't understand some minor thing, that's definitely not a factor to abstain from the bids. We've established a number of channels for the farmers. There are official resolutions by the Cabinet of Ministers that you can read of the websites, and all the way up to simple things when the farmers are being helped to make their baby steps. Everything that is required from them is their desire. So to recapitulate my speech today, it's all about the technical processes. It's about digitalization, new technological processes. Basically, we're only in the beginning of formatting this industry. Ukraine is going to become a leader in demining technologies, application of those technologies. But now, for the farmers, probably it's not so important how we identify the lands, whether they are contaminated or not. The farmers want to sow, they want to harvest, they want to recover their land for processing. So I would like today to focus on the fact that the farmers should understand everything that they need is already created under strict international control. The funds are allocated by big international foundations. There is the maximum number of possible involved international organizations. Just like Mr. Ben has said, there's maximum attention on it. Everything that is required from the farmer is their desire. Thank you, dear colleagues. If you have any questions, I would like to provide you with an opportunity to ask your questions. So the floor is yours. Good morning, the head of Humanitarian Demining department. I'm talking on behalf of an agrarian, not as a mine action operator. There were a couple of questions. There was a question about NTS, so the agrarians were asking whether the mechanism is already in place, but it should be just made clear that the mechanism already exists. And now the questions are about the problems that we were facing. So the first problem is not all of our cadastres are reflected online. We wanted to submit more land plots because we don't have enough capabilities to demine certain land plots by ourselves. We wanted to outsource it, but still not all of the plots are reflected in the cadastre, and we cannot submit them in our application. If I'm not mistaken, and if I'm mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, they are not being reflected due to the types of property, because some of them are being leased, some of them are in ownership, for some of them the lease was already expired. So what we were trying to say that we are going to expand the program, and we are going to take into account all those system bugs or shortcomings. So this year our plan with Volodymyr is to finalize our work for such land plots that don't reflect in the cadastre, and probably we will also cover small land plots in the ownership of individuals because they are not reflected in cadastre either. And if I'm allowed, let me add that the program itself is being implemented at the expense of Ukraine facility funds, and there is maximum attention to drawing of these funds. So in the beginning of the program, to admit some lands with unclear statutes where the owner is not quite clear, and there were some agreements that were not legally signed. There are some farmers who work on individual basis. We were discussing it with our colleagues. There's a lot of laws that are processed by the farmers that do not even exist in the cadastre. So this year we had to demonstrate it to the global community that we have transparent program with transparent KPIs, and there can be no some double construing of this or that agreement. For us it's a reality, but for our international partners who allocate those funds, they keep asking me, so why don't you bring all of the agreements in compliance? And as Mr. Leonid has said, well, it's not easy. It takes time. So this year, after we've seen that the program has started working, that it has become clear, we want this, for example, issue with non-reflection of certain land lots, we want to solve it. And when it comes to individual farmers, we also consider an option of the option to submit the bigger number of applications, for example, for those land lots that are not reflected in the cadastre. So we haven't stopped there. We keep working on it, and hopefully this year, within the next quarter, we're about to expand the program, and we'll definitely solve this issue. We understand what you're talking about. It's not a simple issue to resolve because it's difficult for the state to find additional funds now, so there can be no double construing about the ownership of the land. And another question. So again, this is what our company has stumbled upon. Probably smaller farmers, they don't have such problems. So we are registered in the state cadastre, and as we submit the application, that person who submits the application, they cannot pick all of the points. They have to, or pick all of the items. They have to submit separate like inquiries for different departments? Why cannot the information from the cadastre be integrated with this platform? So it's about the cadastre or state agrarian register. So when the program was established, we had to find some entry point, how to enter this program. It should be clear for everybody. And the issue you're talking about is more of a question to the State Agrarian Register. We have two people working in our organization who work with the State Agrarian Register. And starting with the cabinet, people keep asking, why cannot we submit a number of applications, like several at a time? But it's more of a technical issue. And we keep working with the State Agrarian Register because it's a clear entry point for the farmers. We were thinking about implementation of this entry point in DIA or establishment of our own platform, but to make it as efficient as possible and as clear for the agrarian community as possible, we've decided to make it in State Agrarian Register. So functionality, when it comes to this information, we take everything into account. I think that there will be no obstacles for us to modernize the State Agrarian Register. We don't have to change our platform. It's going to be the responsibility of the State Ministry of Agriculture who are developing this program. But again, I need to add that if the users of the system see ways to improve the system, please provide your feedback, because we cannot do it on a quality basis without your feedback. As soon as we get the feedback, we will improve the system. If we need additional resources, we'll look for them, but it's not going to work without your feedback, because without the feedback, it would be impossible to develop the algorithm of this resolution. Well, there is no digital tool, but everything is based on a feedback. Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions from the floor, please? Good afternoon, everybody. Demining service. I'm talking on behalf of the operators. First of all, thank you for this program. We take active part in this program. We demine the Ukrainian agricultural lands, and really the problem that we've come across, it was emphasized a number of times today, when the agrarians submit application for their lands, turns out that they don't have NTS. And as Mr. Volodymyr has said today, on the other hand, the agrarians, even knowing that there is a risk for them, they still go out in the field because it's necessary for them as a farmer. And for what I understand, no farmer will go out in the field in case there is a significant risk there. And if they don't have sufficient funds for demining, they cannot wait until some donor operator or commercial operator who can make the non-technical survey for them. So don't you have such an idea to allow a farmer to submit an application even if they have a suspicion that their lot is contaminated? Obviously, if there was no NTS, the farmers may have some facts, some reliable facts based on which they can consider their land plot to be contaminated or suspected to be contaminated. And for example, when the agrarians submit 5 cadastral numbers, it turns out that one of the lots didn't have NTS for them. So basically, what is the question? Is it possible to make it in a way that the application is accepted not only for those land plots where there was NTS, but also for those where non-technical survey was not done? Well, thank you for your question. We keep working on our contracts every single day, and theoretically we could do it, but practically not. we were coming across the agrarians who sometimes act unfaithfully. And if we allow to submit such applications, sometimes the farmers cannot even submit the right application in case their land is really contaminated. There are still people who, it's not a secret for anybody, who would like to abuse this program a little bit. So if we allow submitting applications for the land lots with no non-technical survey, there are agrarians who try submitting applications from Chernivtsi region, but again, after 10 or 20 bits, you'll have no more capabilities. You're just going to rush around the fields with no contamination. So theoretically, yeah, we could do it, but practically, given the approach of the operators and the farmers themselves, again, given the capacity of the existing operators, we'll hardly be able to do so. It's a kind of a philosophical construct. I can compare it to the construction of a residential building. If we start building a house in the field, in the middle of the field, we could build it in the way we like it, but we entered this construction site where the foundation was already built. And on this foundation, we try to build something that corresponds to today's trends, fashion, requirements, demands. So there is a little bit of complication behind the intention to replan. Well, for the time being, we're hardly going to do it. In future, probably so. Sooner or later, this program is going to work even with the land lots where non-technical survey was not performed. But let's remember that we work in the territory that was deoccupied, that is behind 20 kilometers buffer zone, behind the front line, and it's a really, really small piece of Ukrainian territory. We have a lot of work ahead. The program is going to be modernized, and I assume that in future some new procedures will be developed. So let's not restrict ourselves on one hand, and on the other hand, let's adequately evaluate our capabilities and not to end up in prison at the same time. Well, and we really understand that we have a lot of capacity to imagine how things are going to work and move along this track. But for me, as the head of the center, it's important to make sure that in such bids, we don't only trade cadastres, but polygons. It's going to change the price for the operators. But again, it was not our idea to invent this cadastre system. And sometimes we come across this situation that in some land plot that we suspect 1 mile and it's actually 50 of them. And there are some bigger land lots like 200 or 20 or 30 hectares, and you encounter like 1 mine there or even nothing, and the land is immediately released. But it's important to make sure that what we do is in compliance with the Ukrainian legislation, to make sure that our international partners don't have any questions in terms of allocation of funds, because we rely on this international aid, and we should be as thorough as possible, and our international partners should have no doubts that we are doing the right thing and we are doing it in the right way. So we're walking in quite cautious steps. Can you please speak the microphone? Well, Andriy Zaika, Legal Business Inform. There are charts on the screen, and they say that there will be $1 billion hryvnia spent under those bids. So if we don't improve the existing dynamics that we have today, our forecast is 1 billion, but we have to use the full potential. So you need to use 3 billion. Yes, we all need to draw 3 billion because this is how it's written in Ukraine facility program, which is not only about demining, but it's about the support of Ukraine in amount of 50 billion euros. So it's one of the indicators. So basically, we have to draw 3. If we don't do anything with the current dynamics, it's going to be 1. So now we're making this broadcast, this press conference, and then we'll make a roadshow in the regions. Let me add a little bit. There were jokes about the farmers from Bukovina, Ternopil region, and other regions, but the war is still unfortunately going on. There is a factor that people don't mention. Well, people do mention that in the night we have drone attacks, and they're coming in large numbers. So, unfortunately, we cannot be confident that the land lots in Vinnytsia or Ternopil region are not contaminated with unexploded ordnance. Yes, the biggest masses of explosives are being transported with those drones. So basically, we cannot safely state. We keep joking now because the applications were of joking manner, but all of the Ukrainian territory is under the threat of contamination with unexploded ordnance. So no matter what's happening now, we still can understand what's going on all around Ukraine.
Ukraine is quite unique in the sense that humanitarian mine action, demining, whatever we want to call it, has started during the conflict in parallel, as was just said. And one of the issues is, and it's what we're trying to support and help the government with, many legal issues related to many different aspects of clearance, the cadastre issue, many things like that. They need to be updated. And of course, it's not so easy just to update a legal framework. It has a process and a procedure. And especially at the moment, with the pressure of the war continuing, I'm sure this will get done, but maybe not as quickly as it would have done. And these things make it quite hard, or more difficult, I should say, to implement this program, which is innovative. So I think we all need patience with this. There are many things. I won't go into it now. I mean, we could have an hour. I could bore you absolutely crazy with talking about surveying clearance in discussion with technical colleagues who are in the audience as well. But these things, normally, it's not us as deminers, it's the legal frameworks, it's things like that. It's the procedures that have to be followed. They're not fast. They can't be that fast because they're legal procedures and changes to the law. And during a conflict, it just compounds it. So I think we have to accept some flaws in the system, but also to acknowledge, I've been here now only 3 months, but I've seen an enormous amount of commitment and effort from everybody involved to try and overcome these issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ben. Any more comments or questions on the floor? A microphone, please. Thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you for the presentation. And I want to thank everybody who was taking part in this press conference. And I hope that all of the farmers who are able to use this program will make use of it. Please don't wait. Submit your applications so our land becomes cleaner. Well, and I obviously want to thank our security and defense forces for the opportunity to hold events like this. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.